All right, great to see everybody. I am honored to moderate this wonderful panel. We are going to be talking about innovation in rural America, investment, workforce development, skills development, entrepreneurship. And you could, and I have been to probably a dozen conferences where I have seen entire days talk about how gloomy it is in rural, and stats of how investment doesn't go there. And we are not going to start with that because I don't think that would be a surprise. What is really exciting amid the chaos is there are a lot of wonderful people, including our three great panelists who've been working for a very long time in changing that sometimes gloomy narrative. And so as we introduce our panelists, I'd love you to say who you are, what you are doing in rural America. And let's start with a positive. Tell me a story of something that you, an entrepreneur you've seen, an initiative you've helped, that hey, if we do more of this, we're really getting somewhere. This is exactly the kind of thing that we need to see a lot more of. And I am Ross Baird. I am the second Ross on the panel. I'll defer to my senior Ross, who has the best name on the panel, and is Ross A. Ross DeVol, please kick us off.
Well, thank you, Ross, or I should say the other Ross. It's one of the few occasions when it pays to be the elder in the room. One of the things I'm most interested in and excited about is a program we just started piloting in rural high schools, working with the Rooted Alliance. And it really is a program that tries to get the juniors and seniors to educate them on their career opportunities. So many of these kids from rural high schools don't understand the pathways that are available to them. And so it's a program where it tells you what wages you can earn in different occupations, the certifications that are required, the associate degrees that you might need, when you need to file a FAFSA, and kind of take you through the whole pipeline, how you need to get into a nursing program, and you can essentially get an associate degree in nursing when you graduate from high school. So in 2 weeks, we're going to be having 5 of these young professionals that are graduating as seniors this year talk about how the program has altered their career trajectory that they weren't aware of. And it's really exciting. Some are going into the military, others are going on to community colleges that was never a part of their pathway. So once again, it's a pilot program. We started it in rural Arkansas, but we're looking to expand it to other parts of the Heartland.
Thanks. That's probably a good segue. I'm sure you know quite a bit about Arkansas,
Yeah.
But tell us not just in Arkansas, but in the, and you made a comment as we talked about this panel, you know, a lot of people look at rural America and see deficiencies. Walmart looks at America and says, these are like the vast majority of our assets. So talk about that mindset and then maybe something you're working on that gives you hope.
Sure. Thanks for having me. And part of the privilege of my job is I spend some time in the business and some time in philanthropy thinking about how we use these tools to make change. And the stat that often blows people away is 90% of Americans live within 10 miles of a Walmart. And so that means we are in these communities. We often can be the hub, we can be a big part of it. We have assets in rural communities to really solve problems. I grew up in a small town, so my story actually is really personal. A couple of years ago, I got a text from my dad, who's a local rural physician, and he was like, "Can you tell me what this Walmart Academy thing is?" And I was like, "Yes." And I was like, "How did this come up, and why are you asking? Like, we don't really talk about my job." And he said, "I have had multiple patients come in and tell me they're graduating from Walmart Academy and show me pictures of graduation, and they're in caps and gowns, and their families are there." And these are 200 facilities we've built around the country that are located with the store and are on-the-job learning, skill building, and they come with things like graduation. They're taught by iPad. You know, it's skill building while you're on your job, relevant skills, but then it graduates. And part of the narrative my dad was really saying is like, the number of these patients of his that had never graduated from high school, this was a big deal. Their family was coming and seeing them graduate. And then they were enrolling in things like community college. So how do we use employers to really change trajectories of their workforce and build skills that are relevant for the community?
Thanks. Bobby, I appreciate your leadership in venture capital investment and entrepreneurs of all shapes and sizes all across the country. There are some structural issues that I want to ask you more about later, but I want you to start. What is a rural entrepreneur that you say, if we had 10,000 of these, the country would be doing fantastically?
Well, there's some great examples of entrepreneurs we say outside the traditional hubs, and many of them are in the heartland that Ross spends a lot of time in. And as Julie said, there's a Walmart very close to him. For us, one example is in Minnesota, where a company using some research out of the University of Michigan, entrepreneurs got together with investors, and they said, hey, there's this research that uses sound waves in a really cool way. And they created a device, and you couple it to your skin, non-invasive, and it uses sound waves to destroy tumors. And they got FDA approval for, I think the first one was liver. Now they'll go back for the other organs. And it breaks it up into a slurry. The body absorbs it. It helps it create antibodies. This didn't happen in San Francisco, right? Mm-hmm. There's another company, there's one in Utah. There's one in Washington State. One of them is doing autonomous drones for farmers that is basically can run all night, and it identifies weeds and things like that, and it uses a laser instead of pesticides. I mean, so another one is building autonomous drone capability to protect against bad drones. So a lot of innovation happens outside of the traditional areas where so much venture capital is concentrated, although not all, and it's being spread out across the country a lot more.
Well, let me follow up on that. I'll ask the senior Ross on the panel a question as a follow-up. So early in my career, we ran a series of accelerators in venture investment, and our most successful financial investment was a company out of rural Indiana that made basically bug zappers that you put in fields, and they could tell the good bugs. They would not zap the bumblebees, and they would zap the locusts, and it was extreme big data, and it was very financially successful and created 150 jobs in this little Indiana town. A precondition to doing that in rural Indiana would be broadband, high-speed internet. I know this is something that you've done wonderful research on and have been at the forefront of. We have kind of a dual economy in rural America. Some places do have extremely fast internet. Others have tried for 20 years and there's not there. What are the learnings of preconditions, maybe policy, maybe local stakeholders? How do we get more people connected?
That's a great question. We've been running a program called Connecting the Heartland to High-Speed Internet Access, principally in rural areas, but also in some urban locations. In the past, when these funds have gone out, there hasn't been coordination between local, state government, and the federal government. So we've actually participated in helping states write their digital equity plans and incorporating how do we maximize getting broadband, high-speed internet access into rural areas. You simply can't compete in the modern economy unless you have access to high-speed internet. It needs to be continuous. You can't receive telemedicine. If you're a pregnant woman, you may have to drive 80 miles to the closest hospital or OBGYN. And so you need that continuous broadband access. There's still some challenges in getting high-speed internet access to many rural locations. We believe we need to be technology agnostic in our approach. Most telecom companies have been participating in this. They've been given an incentive to do so, but there's still challenges there. Sometimes people don't like competition, or they're afraid what might happen in the future. But if you don't have access to high-speed internet, you simply can't compete. It is the #1 economic challenge for many of these rural locations. And you can see it. If you look back at which areas that are rural that received high-speed internet access first, they have done much better than others when you adjust for those factors.
So, Bobby, let me ask you a follow-up, and this may be a bit doom and gloom, but hopefully you can give some guidance. So the other most financially successful entrepreneur from this initiative I mentioned, besides the bug zappers, was this company from Kentucky called Fin Gourmet. And it was this woman who created this way to take Asian carp, which is a hugely invasive species in the Mississippi River watershed. She would pay unemployed people in Paducah, Kentucky to go fishing. She would turn it into She branded Kentucky Blue Snapper. It's like Chilean sea bass is actually a bottom feeder, and that became a very well-selling thing. A company that does now $5 million in revenue. There was an investment fund that I was involved in that created that company is doing $5 million in revenue. They're not a high-growth tech company, but they're a medium growth job creating company, and there was a creative investment structure that went there. Where I worked with the Kauffman Foundation on initiative to do hundreds of these supporting structures. Now, you're telling me, and I want you to share some of the data, venture capital as an industry is extremely entrepreneurial and creative. But we're seeing less innovation, not more, relative to 10 years ago, and much less capital. Tell us about the state of venture capital and what needs to happen.
So maybe you misheard. The capital has gone up over the last 10 years. And one of the good news for this panel is that if you look outside the traditional hubs, what are the traditional hubs? Obviously, California, New York, Massachusetts. That's where most venture capital, that's kind of where it started, and that's where it has been concentrated. But if you look at a couple of stats, first of all, over 62% of venture-backed company jobs are outside of those states. So that's a really good stat.
Yeah.
If you look over the last 10 years and you say, okay, how much capital has it gone up, it's gone down? It actually has doubled the amount of capital going to non-traditional hubs. And if you look at the Heartland states, it's actually tripled. So there is a good story to tell. What I was sharing with you backstage is that this last quarter, these last year or so, the numbers have come down. Now, part of that's unfair because some of it's reverting back to the mean because we had a spike in capital. We had too much capital, some would say. If you're an entrepreneur, you don't say that. No. But some would say there was too much capital because in 21 and 22, a lot of non-traditional sources came in. It caused valuations to go up. It was hard to deploy. There was a lot of competition to kind of get into deals and so forth. But then it kind of went way down. And that's where we are now. And the reasons are there's not distributions because there aren't exits. There's not as much M&A. Public policy matters. There's not as many IPOs. People talk about the IPO window. I'm not sure when was the last time it was really open, so to speak. And so it's very difficult. You've got to have that exit. You've got to have that return, that distribution back to the limited partners who provided the capital so that you can go raise another fund and support those entrepreneurs. So as I stand back in my role, now it's 12 years, and sort of look at it, the good news is more is going outside the traditional hubs, tripled in the Heartland, and you're starting to see these examples of entrepreneurs that are doing great things in different parts of the country.
So, and Julie, you were telling me about some of the barriers to workforce. So, entrepreneurs drive the economy, whether it's Kentucky Blue Snapper or Sam Walton, everyone plays a role. But you have got, how many people work for Walmart?
In the U.S., about 1.2 million.
1.2 million. So you've got to hire or retain or grow 1.2 million people. And every year, it's a whole new...
Hopefully many of them stay.
Yeah. So it's not 1.2 new people
year.
every... But, so this is not just a nice thing for philanthropy. It's a key strategic priority to have skilled people in rural America. What are you seeing that is working? What are you seeing that's missing, either policy-wise or what people in this room can do?
Sure. So I can connect a few dots of what we've been talking about. So there is a role for employers to pay. We're spending a lot of time thinking about how we move to a skills-based economy. When you think about a store, the number of career paths at a Walmart is actually a lot more than you see. You've got the auto mechanic in the back, you've got the pharmacy and its technicians, you've got the optical, so you've got health and wellness in the store, you've got management roles, you've got a number of things, much less the truck drivers, supply chain roles, many of which are middle skills jobs. So how do we as a company both provide on-the-job training, but things like we call it Live Better You, a program where we provide free long-term education, whether it's a 4-year degree or a short-term credential, for jobs we know we have on the other side of that. And that becomes really important, and I think hopefully many of them stay with us, but also in a skills-based economy where we can really use the kind of tools Ross talked about. We have data on the skills you learned on the job, the skills you learned in the classroom. That then makes you more mobile to go to other jobs. And we're increasingly investing in tools at state levels to show and map the jobs available for you to be able to see your skills, and that next job actually isn't that far, and you have 80% of the skills needed. You need to go get this next 20%, and here's how you can do that. Because there are a lot of adjacencies when you break a job down to skills that we don't necessarily think about.
Are there, yeah, so maybe that's a great point. I want to maybe follow up on that a bit. Are there any initiatives that the foundation has become deeply involved in that were surprising? And Ross, I want to ask you about maternal health, which was something that came out of your work that was a massive crisis that you maybe not saw at the first. So what do you see that has bubbled up that you maybe not thought about the first time?
I think there is a lot of work being done by states and governors in this space. So we've worked with the National Governors Association, but also in states like Arkansas, Indiana, Colorado, states that have large rural populations. We may think of the cities, but clearly have a need for rural innovation. And they're building these platforms to say, we actually have a lot of data about people's educational backgrounds, these kinds of things. How do we make that available to them? How do we work with employers so that we can see the demand and make sure that our community college classes, all of the training programs we have, close those gaps and really do create a skills-based system across the state? We now have over 26 states that are doing skills-based practices at the state level, and governors play a huge role in that. We're funding a number of those, but think about the level of transformation when you can see that that job that's 10 miles away makes $20,000 more and you have most of the skills, and the community college actually offers a 6-week training program that you could enroll in because you're close to that. And so this idea that your skills and credentials are stacking and you don't have to start over again because everything's recognized.
We do a lot in my day job in affordable housing. I was talking with the biggest housing developer in Texas, and he said, and a couple of days ago, I said, well, did tariffs bother you? He goes, it's not in my top 1,000 worries. I go, what are you worried about? He goes, well, people who work in construction often do so because there aren't any other good jobs. I'm actually worried about good jobs in our rural communities competing with my construction workers. They walk off the job because they get paid better at Walmart, which would be, I think, a good outcome for that person and their family, even if that developer has to pay construction workers.
And there are all kinds of innovations in rural America that need the trained workforce. So if you're investing in a company in rural America that's now going to need people with that tech skill, how are you making sure they know the demand there, they know the training program that's relevant, and they can sign up to be a part of that transformation?
And Ross, I alluded to it, but I was interested in you saying you go down this path, you have 5 years, 6 years in with Heartland Forward, and maternal health, as an example, comes up as a major issue that maybe wasn't even in the original top issue. Talk about that specifically, and more broadly, how do you spot these issues that may be hiding obviously in plain sight, but not in conversations like these?
Yeah, so unfortunately, many rural locations in the United States, especially in the heartland, we've seen maternal health deteriorate, and it's really a tragedy. We've seen hospitals close, access to OBGYN care has been diminished, and when you have to travel sometimes 60, 70, 80 miles to go see an OBGYN, and you have an hourly job, you don't have PTO or vacation sick time you can take, you basically have to take off an entire day. And our research has shown that if you have prenatal visits of 10 times or more, the maternal death rate is cut significantly. And so we've been working on trying to improve access to telehealth so that maybe you can't get to your next appointment, but you could do it through telehealth and people can keep track of you. So this is a major issue for rural America and to building human capital, because if your mother's not healthy, the children aren't going to be healthy, and we're going to underinvest in skills development.
So we have probably 3 minutes left, and I want to respect our wonderful hosts and stay on time. I'm sure they'd love it. I think given, if you pick up the newspaper any given day, the next year or so is unforecastable. But write a headline of something that happens, and pretend we're here 12 months from now, write a headline of something that happened in the last 12 months that you would say that is a really encouraging thing.
Well, I'll do it and do a shameless plug at the same time. So 5 years
Go for it.
5 years ago, we started a nonprofit called Venture Forward. It's ventureforward.org. You can go. So we started VC University with our friends at Berkeley Law School. And it was basically to help educate folks about venture investing. I mean, when I went and got my business degree in the 80s, we didn't talk about venture investing. And so you shouldn't have to have grown up in Palo Alto or New York to understand what it is. So we created this. We had almost 5,000 people go through this online course to learn cap tables, waterfalls, how to do venture investing. And the great news about this is that over half of the folks that are taking this course are from Middle America, or they're coming from underrepresented backgrounds. And the headline that I hope to see in a year is that we have helped create opportunities for people to get exposed. Hopefully there is more capital coming, and that we can have more check writers in rural America supporting entrepreneurs, because entrepreneurs are in rural America as well as in urban America.
Absolutely. Julie.
Okay, let's see. Economic mobility accelerates among the 80 million Americans without a college degree.
Love it.
That's a good headline.
That would be a great mic drop for the panel. However, Ross has a better name than you do, so I will give him the last word on the...
Increasing opportunity entrepreneurship in rural America. We're going to be receiving an award acknowledging our support of entrepreneurs in the center of the country, especially in rural, underserved areas. And we hope that can be a rallying cry, because one of the biggest challenges we face in economic development in rural America is an underappreciation for the importance of starting and scaling your own firms amongst economic development officials and mayors. I spend a lot of time talking about this, showing them the data, that if you want to build a vibrant economy, you need to have entrepreneurs and be able to support them. And many of those entrepreneurs are underrepresented. We're talking about Black, Latino, and female. The amount of venture capital that goes to Black founders is so small, it's hard to measure. I want to see that changed.
Well, Bobby, Julie, Ross, this was a wonderful conversation. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom, and thanks to all of you for making a great day. Appreciate it.
Great. Thank you.